Hey, this is Jimmy Jive, and you're listening to Motor City Rock Talk. Today, my guest is a guitarist slash bassist, because he did play bass in a few of his early bands from the Detroit metro area. Some of the bands he played in starting out back then, and there may have been more, but these are the only ones that I'm aware of, were the Ragdolls, Britain, Jack Black, Fans, Jimmy Bone, and the Grave Robbers. His most recent project and band is, of course, the Horse Cave Trio. Phenomenal band that do a mix of everything from rockabilly to blues, country, just really good stuff. Anyway, today I've got the guitarist from Horse Cave Trio, Mr. Lou Simon. Hey, Lou, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Jimmy. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. It's great to talk to you.
Thank you for having me on.
My pleasure. All right, let's start out with a little background on yourself. Tell me a little bit about where you grew up, maybe some of the music that influenced you growing up to become a musician.
I grew up on the west side of Detroit by Central and McGraw. Went to Catholic school down there for grade school, and then went to St. Andrews, which was pretty close to Chatsey. So we were kind of like Southwest. I started playing when I was pretty young. I think I started playing guitar when I was 10 or 11. And I played, and, I was always a working guy, to earn money. So I bought a guitar, bought a, PA system and all that. And then a couple of younger guys from the neighborhood came over, and they said, "Man, you got a PA system and you got all this stuff. We got a band, but we don't have a bass player. Would you ever consider playing bass? We have a bass." And I'm like, all right, why not? So I picked up the bass. Like I never turned back. I mean, I always continued to play guitar, but that band was TNT.
Oh, TNT, okay.
And we did quite a few gigs with that band. We went down to Florida and recorded, and came back and had the demo played on W4, their homegrown night. I believe it was W4.
Was that in the late 70s then? When would that have been?
Yeah, that would have been 1979.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, did that, and of course, it was the typical, go make the demo and then come back and then break up.
Oh,
because nothing happened fast enough. So From there, I played with some other local guys. We played at a high school. We were still in TNT. And a couple of older guys in the neighborhood were the ones that influenced me. Chris from the Cadillac Kids.
Oh, yeah.
If you're familiar with him, that's who I grew up with. We went to grade school together. He was like a year or two older than me. And so he was the one that kind of influenced me on, you should play guitar. You should play bass, too. You need to write your own songs. You need to, I'm like, okay. Don't try and playing cover songs. Write your own stuff, So he Cadillac Kids took TNT under their wing, and we did a lot of shows through Sure Shot, and we did like the Rockathon at the state fairgrounds, and then after that, one of the older guys in the neighborhood, Jan, was drummer. He brought Mike Kobalash to a show that we were doing, and shortly after that, our band broke up, TNT, and he got in touch with me. He said, "Hey man, you want to play bass in our band?" And I said, "All right." He goes, "We're putting a band together," and that was the beginning of Ragdolls. Britain, basically, then Ragdolls, I think is how it went. We did that for a few years. We got Kenny, and that's when we did the same thing. Because I had a connection in Florida with the Conti family. They had a studio down there in New Smyrna, Edgewater, and we went down and we recorded down there. Shot a video, and then Kenny basically never came home. He stayed down there. We came back, and that band obviously broke up, and Kenny continued down there, and I think he's down there to this day. I've got to talk to him. In the last couple of years, we've been in contact. We were talking about doing a little project. After that, then I kind of bounced around and did a couple other things. I played with bands that I don't think ever, like trying to get them together, that kind of thing.
Sure.
And then Mike called me again and said, "Hey, I knew that Mike had got in with Jack Black, which was, Jack from Strut, and Mickey, and Jimmy Bones on keyboards, and they needed a bass player." And he said, "We just fired our bass player, and you got to learn all these songs, and we're playing Harpo's next weekend."
Oh, geez.
And I'm like, okay. So I crashed and just, learned all those tunes, and we hit the ground running, and I was in that band, and we did once a month. We played at Harpo's. We'd play Thursday night. We would headline. Friday night we would open, and Saturday night we would open for whoever the headliner was. And we did that for quite a while. We played Canada, played all over, all the clubs that were happening back then, Harpo's, the Main Act, and the Ritz, and all that stuff. We did that for a while, and then Jack didn't want to do it anymore. So we kept the same core group, and then we got Mark Fennell from Seduce, who originally sang with Seduce, was in the band with Mickey. He started singing, and we called it The Fans, and we basically did like a 60s type deal, all 60s and early 70s music, and doing 3 sets a night, 4 sets a night, and we played a bunch of gigs doing that. And then that kind of faded out. And then Jimmy said, well, I want to keep going, man. You want to keep going? I'm like, yeah. He goes, well, I got an idea to do this Jimmy Bones and the Grave Robbers, and we're just going to do our all original straight stuff. So I played bass, Jimmy. It was me, Jimmy, Dominic Lamar, Tommy Sokola on guitar. And we did that. Tommy played with Carolyn Streho, I believe, played in a couple other bands. And then Dominic, he's well-known drummer. He's played with just about everybody on the East Side. I think he did a little stint with the Romantics for a minute, and he played with the Rob Tyner, one of the versions of that band, and with Johnny Angelos, Reputations, and all that stuff. So we did that, and that band went to, actually, in the very beginning was Jimmy and I and Mickey and Mike. Mickey and Mike left, and then we got Dominic and Tommy, and then that's where I kind of transitioned from bass to guitar.
Right.
Because Jimmy's like, he goes, man, you play guitar all the time when we're writing songs and stuff. He goes, you should just pursue guitar. We'll get a bass player. Eventually we did. And that was Randy Nasuti. And then we had another bass player after that. And then the final version of that was Jimmy, myself, Rob, and Larry Ritz and Rob Lull. We did that for a while. We recorded at Pastoria Studio downtown. And then after that, Jimmy kind of went off into, he started playing with Mimi Harris and the Snakes, and he started doing studio work. And we just couldn't get, we were working it, but we just wasn't happening. We weren't making any tracks, and we recorded, but it wasn't, there wasn't enough going on. So, and of course we were all working guys, so Jimmy worked, I worked, and then of course he went on to, play with Kid Rock, and we've always been close. So, and then after that, I played in a blues band, the Brown Paper Blues Band, which was a bunch of guys from work. I worked at DTE for 35 years.
Oh, okay.
And on the side, there was a project going on at work. That's how I met the guys. They wanted to do a video type thing. And there was this guy, John Milan, and he was putting it all together. And we went to his house and rehearsed, and we put out this video for work. And then in the meantime, he called me up and he said, hey man, he goes, I got a project going at my house. You want to come over and play some guitar? And I'm like, yeah. So they were recording in the basement. And that's where I met Ron DeVore. And so it was in between the break, when the guys would go out and go smoke, me and Ron would, stay downstairs, and I go, hey, I got an idea, and he'd say, yeah, and we go back and forth. And then he called me up one day and said, you want to start a band? And I'm like, yeah, sure, and he goes, well, I just want to do a trio. And I'm like, okay. He played acoustic bass, and I played guitar, and then we had drummer Rob Hayes. We just started recording. We cut a record. And then we started playing, and then I think we had recorded all the songs for the second record, and the drummer quit. And then we got another drummer, and then we continued on, and we were pushing that second record pretty heavy, and that's when we started playing all over the place, and we started going out to Kansas City and Cleveland and Chicago and, up north, anywhere we could gig. We were weekend warriors. We would leave like on a Thursday and come back on Sunday, because again, we all had jobs, and we did that for quite some time, and then we cut like another record, and then that drummer, we started working with Jimmy. Jimmy Bones was pretty instrumental, because he at one point after we did the second record, he was like, who are you going to work with now? I said, I'm not sure. I said, well, we want to record, and do another record. And he goes, you should think about Tino Gross. He's hip to you guys, and he really likes what you're doing, and you should, he goes, I could introduce you. He goes, I think it'd be a good move. So we did that, and we cut the Hart County record. And that's when we were able to crack into the East Side, and we started playing at like places like Callahan's, and we were opening up shows for the Holland Diablos. And then it just led from there. We got in with the guy that owned Callahan's, and he started calling us up and asking us if we wanted to open for Jimmy Vaughn, and we opened for John Mayall, we opened for Johnny Winter, we opened for Albert Lee, we opened for, it got crazy, you know. I mean, it was like, wow, we're getting all these gigs. And then we became like an opener, you know, and we opened for, I mean, there's a whole list, you know, Los Lonely Boys, not there, but then we came back on the west side, did the Token, and we started working with Derek St. Holmes.
Mm-hmm.
We did a bunch of shows with him and Brad Whitford, and we did Mitch Ryder.
You're there all the time, seems like.
Yeah, and then we did the Outlaws. We opened it for the Outlaws. We did a bunch of, you know, and at that point in time, we were kind of, you know, we did 2 records with Tino, and then, you know, we kind of like hit that thing where it was like pre-COVID. We had pretty much done just about everything you could do as for what we were.
Right.
You know, we didn't want to really travel that much anymore. You know, we did a bunch of shows out, Knuckleheads out in Kansas City, and, you know, those kind of things just weren't happening as much anymore. So we kind of took a break for a couple 2 years or something. And COVID had right when COVID hit. It was pre-COVID. When COVID hit, nobody was playing. So we kind of just stopped. And then after that, we decided, you know, that we still have something to say. And then we were working with John Bobby, who's a promoter, and he was the one that kind of gave us another boost and said, hey, man, do you want to open up for Derek St. Holmes and Brad Whitford at the Token? And we were like, yeah, you know, that'd be great. So we went in there, and the place was just jam-packed wall to wall, and we were like, wow, this is crazy. And then just continued, you know, like every time like Derek came into town, we would open for him. And then then he said, well, what about, you want to do Mitch Ryder? And I was like, yeah. So we opened up for Mitch Ryder, and it's like, you want to open up for the Outlaws? Yeah, you know, and we did that at what used to be it was that country bar over off of 94 in Romulus, the Diamondback. So we did that, and then that's about where we're at now. The last show that we did was with Jimmy Bone, and through the years we had played, you know, he'd played on our records. We did a couple little runs with him where we played at Callahan's and out on the other side of the state, you know, did a bunch, because we've been really close friends since I first met him. I mean, we've just been buddies, you know, so that kind of leaves us pretty much where we're at today.
You skipped forward very quickly. I had some questions about the early days. But
go ahead. Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's all right, man. No problem. You had mentioned, I think, in the beginning there that TNT and you went to Florida and recorded. Were you using those demos to get gigs, or were you using those demos to try and get a record deal, or both? And did you do that same thing with the Ragdolls and Burton? Did they record demos?
Yes, both. And both were the neighborhood that I grew up in. There was a family that lived on St. Lawrence, and their dad, Dick Caccetti, and Lillian Caccetti were both music people. Dick played first trumpet with Johnny Trudell and played in the Union. He did shows with Tom Jones and with Paul Anka. So he and Lillian was a school teacher for music. So they had 9 kids.
Wow.
And early on, all those kids started playing. My buddy Chris, you know, their son Chris, and he was a drummer. And then his younger brother Gino was like the lead vocalist and guitar player. And then his sisters were in the band. They were doing a touring circuit, and they opened for everybody, like, you know, Sammy Davis Jr. and Danny Thomas. They did like the Vegas thing. You know, they toured all over the United States. And eventually they went down to Florida and they bought a studio. And when they got that studio, they also bought a old convalescent home, and they took the studio gear that they bought from this building and put it into this convalescent home and remodeled it into like a video audio place that they were trying to, you know, get off the ground. So when they first bought the first studio, it was just a small building, but it had all this analog great stuff, MCI boards and all that stuff. And Chris said, hey, why don't you bring TNT down here and record all these songs that you have? So we did that. My dad bought us an old beat up up van and we took it to his buddy's garage and revamped it, and a 2-day thing, put new tires on it and got it. And we had like a little road crew, and those guys drove the van and all the equipment down, and then the band, we flew down to Florida, and we recorded these songs. And Chris, my buddy Chris, that's a drummer, he engineered it pretty much. Learning, the studio. And then we came back, and that was the whole thing that we were trying to do, was trying to shop it.
Right.
Like, what are we going to do? And so Chris's dad was working on that. But by the time we got back home, there was all this inner turmoil between us. So it kind of fell apart. And then when we did the Britain Ragdolls piece, when Kenny was in the band, we did the same thing. We had a bunch of gear. We sold all the gear, drove down to Florida, took all the necessary stuff that we needed. And by then they had moved all the studio equipment into this big convalescent home, and that's where we stayed. So it had rooms, so we stayed there. I think we were down there for like a week or 2 weeks. We recorded, and then there was a video shoot, and one of the guys was a videographer. He had worked with Billy Joel, and he came down, and then we had Ken Sands, who engineered it, and Ken Sands worked at Motown and did a lot of those projects. So, we thought we really had something going right then, because that was like right around the beginning of, when Motley Crue did their Too Fast for Love, the first record. So it was that time period. They had a guy out of Chicago starting shopping the demos for us. But right at that point in time, that must have been 84, because I think that's when Thriller came out. Everybody had blinders on at that point. They didn't want it. The guy that we had that was shopping all the stuff told us to just go back to Detroit. I'll work on this. You guys keep doing what you're doing. And that didn't happen. We came back to Detroit from, we didn't get a record deal. It was like a month.
When you mentioned Motley Crue and all that, were you guys that kind of band? Were you guys like a glam metal band? Was that
we were definitely like a glam metal band. Yeah.
To this day, do you still have any of those demos, or do they all just disappear?
I do have them somewhere. I have a demo of the TNT stuff, but it's not the complete recording, because everything was done on acetate tape back then, and some of it started to fade away. But I had a majority of the songs. I think there was only 9 songs, maybe 6 to 9 songs on TNT. And then with Ragdolls, that was probably about the same. We probably had 8 or 9 songs. And I think I have a copy of that on cassette somewhere. I might even have it on a CD. So to answer your question in a long way around, was both of those groups were basically trying to shop a deal. So at that time when I first went down, I think I was 18, and then the second time I went down, I was like 23.
Well, you also had said that they were setting up for to do video. Did you guys ever do any kind of video down there when you were there too?
There is actual video of those sessions. It never got edited. It never made it that far. We had enough in the budget to get it filmed, but we never got it completed. So the video that I have is like kind of raw, and it's the whole room. But yeah, I have tapes of that. And I actually have a lot of video of Jack Black at different places, and video of Jimmy Bones and the Grave Robbers, I think at a couple of different places where we put downtown.
Well, the thing you mentioned about Jack Black, from what I understood from talking to Mickey and seeing some of the stuff and hearing some of the stuff, didn't you guys do mostly covers in that band? How much of this stuff was actually original? Strut was a lot of covers. They ended up later on doing some original stuff. But with that band, were you guys doing, when you were saying you were playing some nights where you were playing 4 sets, was it all original, or did you have to throw in a bunch of covers?
There was a lot of covers in that band. I mean, we were doing them kind of our way, putting our spin on them, but we did have Jimmy, and that was already kind of written before I got in the band. Jimmy Bones and Jack had written some songs. There was some stuff that Jack had from Strut days.
Yeah.
Like Jack, we're drinking Jack, drinking Jack Black. Yeah, there was a handful of songs that we were doing, and that was part of the thing with Jack. We hooked up after years after he started coming out and seeing us in Horse Cave. And we had a long conversation, and he was like, goes, back then, I said, I didn't know what happened. It was like all of a sudden the band was over. We were doing 3 nights in Harpo's, and he looked at me and he said, Saturday night, that's it. I'm walking away. And I thought he was joking, but he wasn't. And that was it. And basically, after all those years, he said, well, he goes, like, I wasn't in a great space at the time. And he goes, and I was more interested in doing original material.
Yeah.
He said, but we got back into the machine, and the machine was putting us into the clubs. And we were working like every Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like nonstop. So there was no time to be, with most of the guys working and stuff, there was really no time to like be creative and take a break and try to, and trying to write. That's what kind of happened.
So we've gone through this stuff. Now, the Fans were another band. You said, you guys played a lot of 60s and 70s style. And when I talked to Mark Fennell, he mentioned that you guys like to do kind of like the oddball stuff that wouldn't be, it was known, but it, like the Turtles and stuff like that.
Yeah, the Turtles, the Tubes.
And I know he was huge into the Tubes. And did you guys, I don't remember, I mean, I've got a video like I put out at my show too of the Fans. And also an interview with Mark. Did you guys do much original material in that band, or was a lot of that still covers?
As far as from what I remember, a lot of it was covers. If there was any, I don't think there was anything that we were doing that like Jimmy, because Jimmy was like the songwriter,
right.
Back then. I mean, Mike and I wrote too, but it got to a point to where at that particular time, it was the easiest way to just move right. We knew a lot of that stuff already. Carried some of the songs over that we had done in Jack Black into the Fan, and then started massaging that into the 60s thing.
Right.
Doing Turtles and 70s, early 70s and all that.
All right, let's move a little farther up into your most recent thing, the Horse Cave Trio a bit.
Sure.
I knew that you'd played a lot with like Derek St. Holmes and all these other bands on the local scene. Now, are you playing mostly then when you do play on the west side, or are you guys playing east side now too and maybe around the state? Because, I mean, the band has taken off. The 3 albums are absolutely phenomenal. I like the fact that you mix everything from rockabilly to blues to country, everything, and you've got different people playing on it. Tino, like you said, I knew the keyboards were probably Jimmy Bones. So where else do you play besides the Token? I mean, I'm sure you play other places, but I mean, that's where I always see you listed.
That's a good good question. In the last couple of years, we've basically kind of been just like, we weren't really doing anything. I mean, we're all to that age, we're all in our 60s, and we all have lives and all that kind of stuff. And it was basically, phone call from John Bobby saying, hey man, you want to do this? And then that turned into, we did Token, we did the Diesel on the east side, and then we did the Diamondback Saloon.
Right.
We also, I'm kind of forgetting a few things. We did some festivals. We did the Ton Up Festival out in Ann Arbor. We did the Hot Wheels show out in Marysville. So outdoor festivals in these other places, wherever the promoter was putting us. To be honest, it's like, we weren't really looking.
Right, I get you.
To be out there. So the things that we got were all because, Ron did and does most of the booking. I had kind of known John Bobby pretty well, so then he started calling me, and between me, him, and Ron, we would iron all the stuff out that we needed to. But in the last couple of years, we've only done 3-4 shows each year, like this last year. Going in, this year, we don't have anything. Currently talking about getting together and sometime in March or April and starting to write some new stuff.
I know you put out a single last year, at least it was listed in Spotify from last year, called Forever Forever. So was that something you had recorded previous to that and you just put it out last year?
Yeah, well, that Forever Forever is actually on the Dust Off the Jukebox record, I believe. It was from one of the sessions that we did with Tino, and then they re-released it again.
Where did you record those albums? Was that done here locally, or did you go down to where a lot of people go, Nashville?
I wish. No, actually, the first 2 records we did in the drummer's basement, and we had Matt Hansen, who teaches audio at Eastern Michigan. He's also worked on like Sponge, and on one of the Sponge records, and some, a lot of other stuff. I think he did work at Big Sky out in Ann Arbor.
Right.
And he kind of recorded and produced our first two records. And then we did kind of a live thing. And then we started working with Tino. And when we did Tino, he had a big room in Pleasant Ridge that was basically kind of an office building type thing. And we did all the live tracking in there. And then we'd go to his house, and then he's got a basement, the funk bunker. We went down there and we did all the overdubs and all the, and that's where Jimmy would come down. We had Jimmy McCarty on it.
Right.
Johnny B wrote a song for us to do, or had a song that was written that we did. Who else was on that? I'm probably forgetting them, but you do the records, but you never go back and listen to them,
And so basically you're all self-produced.
Well, Tino produced the last two, where Ron and I would write all the stuff.
Right.
Ron is a real strong writer and lyricist and all that, and I would have guitar parts, and we would just come up with all the material. And then a lot of that, like we were really getting Tino right in the mix with that, and we worked it all out, started laying it all down. And with the last one, Dust Off the Jukebox, I got real involved with going over with Tino and just mixing and trying different things. So it was a lot of fun. That's the part of it that I like. I like creative part where you're sitting down and you're trying to work things out. And, what about this? What about that?
That's really cool, because just before, we started this, I was listening to Hart County, which to me sounds like a real bluesy kind of country album. And there's harmonica on there, I noticed. And something that sounds like, and maybe it isn't, but something that almost sounded like a lap steel. Was any of that?
Yeah, Steve. Yeah, there you go. You're jogging my memory. So we had a guy named Jim Morris as a pedal steel player. I can't really remember how we got in touch with him. Turned out he had a really long history of playing. He was a truck driver, and he played in the Lawrence Welk touring band when he was like 16 years old, playing pedal steel, not lap steel, pedal steel. And we got together, we did a whole thing with him. We did a whole series of shows, and he wanted to go on the road. He wanted us to quit our jobs and just get on the road. He had some, connections, in Nashville, and he goes, man, I know I can get us work. We were not ready for anything like that, but we did a bunch of shows with him, and Chef Chris goes way back to the beginning, when I first met Ron, and he was at one of the sessions, and he came there and he played harmonica on something that we did, and I think that was through John Mylan knew him. And when we first started Horse Cave Trio, one of the first gigs that we did was down at the Music Menu downtown, like right across from Greektown.
Right.
And that was a boiling pot of all kinds of musicians that were playing down there. Phil Hale and Mimi Harris and just all kinds of bands were coming through there. And that's where we got in with Chef, and we did some stuff with John Sinclair and it was just crazy. We did all kinds of things. But yeah, so Jim Morris, going back to the pedal steel, he was phenomenal.
Yeah, he was.
And he added a whole different thing that we weren't. Ron's look on what we were doing was like he always wanted to focus. He goes, I love the 3-piece. He goes, I love when we add something in, but the core of the band is just the three of us.
Right.
So we kind of steered it back to that. And I got a little away from myself when we went in the studio on the last record, because I was just like excited about layering and putting on different guitars and man, let's put all this stuff. But then at the end of the day, when you're going out and doing the shows,
you can only use
just
so much.
The three of you, So.
Yeah. The last couple of questions I have for you, make it short.
Sure.
I've seen a video you guys token and this and that, people do on their phones. Have you guys with the Horse Cave Trio actually done any actual video for any of your songs?
There's video of us, obviously, yeah.
Right.
Like where we did State Theater with the Rockets. And but there's we shot one in my garage. Again, Matt Hansen was part of that for one of the songs that we did. I think it was off first or second record. And Ron's got all that stuff. He's a historian and very organized and very detailed, and Me, I'm kind of like I got stuff laying all over the place. Like typical guitar player, you know. It's just I got a mess out my barn, you know. But
Well, I'm going to let you go. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today. It's been a great education. I know Mickey's going to look forward to hearing this, and he'll be excited
I love you,
about it.
Mickey.
Yeah, you got to say that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, like I said, I'll let you go. I hope to see you down the line. I wish you the best. You know, suggest get back in there, if nothing else, and do some more recording. Okay.
Thank you, Jimmy, for everything, man. It's
You
been
betcha.
great talking to you. Great getting to know you.
Yeah.
And thanks to Rob, too.
Yeah.
Rob Miller.
Have a great day, man. Like I said, I wish you the best.
Talk soon. Thanks.
All right, buddy. Thanks. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye.
Well, that was Lou Simon. Started out, playing guitar, then switched over to bass while he was in, like he said, the early days with TNT, Ragdolls Britain. He joined Jack Black with Jimmy Bones and Mickey Sinclair and Michael Lebowski. And then, of course, he did a stint with the Fans with Mark Fennell and Mickey and all those guys. Mark, of course, was with Seduce. Then he hooked back up with Jimmy Bones and started a group called Jimmy Bones and the Grave Robbers. Exceptionally great. Jimmy Bones, of course, is a phenomenal keyboard player who, of course, went on to have great success playing with Kid Rock. And, of course, his most recent thing that he's been doing for a number of years, at least since 2009 when they put out their first recording, Horse Cave Trio. Just a phenomenal group, a great mix of rockabilly, blues, country, you name it. They throw everything in there. Tremendous songs, great players, just incredible stuff. And that's all available on all the streaming services, of course, also. So, like I say, and if they get out and play again, and like I said, I was hoping he said they had something coming up, but nothing yet. Check them out. Check them out. They're just phenomenal. They've got videos, obviously, shot. Fans on the YouTube, they can check them out, but just a phenomenal group. Hey, is that old stereo system of yours giving you the blues? Maybe the receiver has a blown channel or the turntable just doesn't work right. Well, then you should visit my friends at 7 Grand Audio Service. They've been in business for over 40 years. Located at 25642 7 Mile Road in Redford, the owner Dash and his assistant Harry can fix just about anything. It doesn't matter if it's old, new, whatever. I'm talking about receivers, tape decks, turntables, EQs, power amps, and yes, guitar and bass amps. The phone number over there is 313-533-3635. Open Monday through Friday, 10 to 6. Like I say, if you have any issues with stereo equipment or equipment of any kind as far as that, you really need to check them out. I know you won't be disappointed. And tell them Jimmy sent you. Anyway, with that being said, as I always say, keep rocking.
Get your mind right and listen to what I say. Oh baby, if the time's right, I might have to make my play. You know, and I know, this moment might get away. Oh baby, get your mind right and listen to what I say. Loosen up. Dig the Memphis shine.